She left me at an airport in another country with nothing but a dead phone and a suitcase full of scarves. A few days later, I saw the photos. My house was completely emptied. My quilt tossed in the trash like it meant nothing. I heard she told someone I didn't think she'd make it back. But I did. I'm Judith Mayfield. I'm 71 years old. And what my daughter didn't realize was that I still had one thing she couldn't take from me: my name. El Prat Airport smelled like duty-free perfume and stale coffee. I stood at the arrival gate searching for her face. Brielle was supposed to meet me. I thought maybe she'd be holding a little sign, smiling, showing off a bit. But the crowd got smaller and smaller until there was no one left. I waited 3 hours. My phone gave out somewhere between trying to load a map and rereading her last message. I asked a staff member if I could borrow a charger. He gave me a kind smile and pointed to a vending machine. It sold USB cords for 14 euros. I didn't have any euros, just a few wrinkled dollars and a credit card I wasn't sure would even work there. I dragged my suitcase to a bench near the departure board. The lights above it flickered. Barcelona had sounded so beautiful when Brielle first brought it up. She told me I needed space. She said Europe would help me breathe. I didn't realize she meant that literally. It was only when I unzipped my suitcase that everything started making sense. No toiletries, no charger, just a neat stack of scarves, a paperback I'd already read, and a small note tucked inside the front cover. It said, "You said you always wanted space. Here it is," written in her neat, curly cursive like she was still a teenager. That night, I slept sitting up on a hard plastic bench, my neck stiff, my feet cold, even though I was wearing wool socks. A janitor cleaned around me like I was just part of the furniture. I must have looked like someone the world forgot on purpose. When morning came, the lights in the terminal buzzed to life. A weak Wi-Fi signal finally blinked on. I connected long enough to open my email. The screen was so bright it hurt to read. That's when I saw the message. No subject, no name, just a link. I clicked it, and there they were, photo after photo of my house. The peonies I planted, gone. The living room completely stripped. My recliner, James's chair, both missing. Bare walls. An empty bedroom I couldn't even recognize. Then came the one photo that stopped everything. A wide shot of the driveway, the trash bin by the curb, and poking out from under a broken lamp and a cracked vase was my quilt, the one I made by hand over 3 long winters, the one I wrapped Brielle in when she had the chicken pox, the one James and I always laid out for Sunday picnics. There it was, stuffed into the garbage like it didn't matter. My hands didn't shake because I'm old, not then. They shook because something in me cracked. I sat up, took a deep breath. Maybe she thought I'd disappear over here, fade away in a place I didn't know, but I was still standing, still breathing, and I still had my name. I closed the email, and I bought a one-way ticket home. I wasn't planning to tell this story, not like this. But if you've ever stood somewhere you didn't belong, holding nothing but your breath and your name, then maybe you know why I had to start here. Tell me, have you ever been blindsided by someone you loved? If my voice sounds even a little like yours, I'd love to hear from you. And if you feel like staying a while, there's more to share. Because a woman doesn't come all the way back across an ocean just to unpack a suitcase full of scarves. She comes back for something else entirely. The porch creaked under my feet like it didn't want me back. The welcome mat was gone. So was the spare key I used to hide under the stone rabbit. I reached for it anyway, just out of habit, but all I felt was dirt. The wind cut through my coat, sharper than it should have been for April. Something felt different. Maybe it was the house, maybe it was me. I stood there, staring at the front door. The brass knocker James put up years ago was missing. In its place, just a faint smudge, like a memory that had been wiped clean. I pressed the doorbell. Nothing happened. The windows looked back at me, blank and cold. Then I noticed the mailbox, or the fact that it wasn't there. She had even taken the mailbox. Years ago, Brielle painted her name across it in bright purple. She was 6 and proud of every wobbly letter. Now there was nothing left but 2 empty screw holes. Even the garden, which used to be the pride of this home, looked wrecked. The rose bushes were gone, and right there, in their place, stood a crooked for sale sign, leaning like it had given up. I walked around to the back. Gravel crunched under my shoes. And that's when I saw it, a note taped to the glass door. Please don't make this harder. I've taken care of everything. B. My breath fogged up the glass. Inside, the furniture was gone. Not covered, not moved, just gone. The curtains I sewed by hand had been replaced with something cheap and gray. It didn't look like my house anymore. It looked like a stranger's. My knees buckled a little, but I caught myself before I fell. Across the street, Sylvia's door opened. She stood there, frozen, still wearing her gardening gloves. "Judith?" she called. "Oh my goodness, come in right now." Inside her kitchen, nothing had changed. Same floral wallpaper, same old ticking clock. She poured tea into the chipped mug I used to drink from years ago. I didn't even remember sitting down, but somehow I was in the chair, holding that warm cup like it could keep me from falling apart. "I tried calling you," Sylvia said softly, "but I thought maybe you had agreed to it." I shook my head. "She told me you left the country on your own, that you wanted to downsize. I thought it sounded odd, but she said it with so much certainty." I stared down at my tea. She sold the house? Sylvia opened her laptop and typed in the address I knew better than my own name. There it was, my house, on the screen. Bright, empty, and hollow. Listed as sale pending. The photos made it look bigger somehow. Colder. Not like home. Then I saw it. One of the photos was from a local free stuff group. There, slumped over a black trash bin, was my wedding quilt. The one James and I stitched together that first winter after we got married. I'd sewn our initials into the corner. I could still see them, even in the photo. My eyes didn't tear up. Not yet. I just folded the scarf I brought home from Spain. Warm, red, and the only thing Brielle hadn't touched. I laid it across my lap. "She made one mistake," I said quietly. "She always forgot that I paid attention." Sylvia's guest bed creaked when I shifted, but it held me like it had been waiting a long time to do just that. Her cat, a fluffy old tabby named Earl Grey, climbed onto my chest sometime after midnight. He looked at me with those sleepy, knowing eyes and started purring. It felt like he understood, like he knew what it meant to be erased. The next morning, I walked into her kitchen barefoot. She handed me a chipped mug of black coffee and said, plain as anything, "I know a man. He helped my sister when her son tried to pull something similar. Quiet type, smart, wears shoes older than my marriage." I held the mug steady, but my hands were shaking. "I don't have anything left," I said. "You have your name," she replied, "and we start there." The law office was tucked above a little bakery that smelled like cinnamon and warm maple. The staircase was narrow and lined with framed photos of lakes and sunsets, the kind you find in old calendars nobody turns anymore. I climbed slow, holding the railing, breathing in sugar and something like wood polish. Mr. Connolly welcomed us in a wool vest and gold-rimmed glasses. His office was crammed with books and barely lit, but his eyes were kind. He shook my hand like it still meant something. He glanced at the copies Sylvia had printed out, real estate papers, guardianship forms, and his face tightened. These weren't just rushed, he said. They're questionable. Your signature's been traced, and not well. I swallowed. Can we undo it? He leaned back a bit. You've got a case, Mrs. Mayfield, but it won't be easy. The courts don't move fast, and they don't move on gut feelings. You'll need proof, dates, records, someone willing to speak up. His tone was steady, not harsh, just honest. I thanked him, though I barely remembered doing it. The hallway felt colder on the way out than it had coming in. I stepped outside, blinking against the sun, and then I heard someone call my name. Judith? Across the street, standing at the crosswalk, was a woman in a navy coat. Her gray-streaked hair pulled back in the same tight bun I remember from college. Ramona Vega. I hadn't seen her in 42 years, not since we danced barefoot in the snow at Middlebury, promising we'd change the world. I smiled before I even realized I was doing it. She crossed the street with her arms already open. I thought it was you, she said, out of breath. You haven't changed. Well, maybe the shoes. We laughed, not loud, not rushed, just soft and careful, like two people remembering the warmth but not the wounds. We ended up at the cafe next door, two old women with too many memories and not quite enough sugar in our tea. I told her everything, Spain, the note, the quilt. She didn't interrupt, just listened. Let me speak. Let the silence settle around my words like gentle hands. When I finally stopped, she reached out and touched my wrist, light as wind. You're not alone in this. Let me help. I looked at her fingers, then out the window at a family walking by with balloons and a golden retriever. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. Ramona's words wrapped around me that night like a warm blanket. Let me help. Just 3 simple words, but they weren't something I was used to hearing. I'd spent most of my life helping other people, making lunches, sitting at hospital bedsides, ironing shirts late into the night. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to let someone help me for once. The next morning, I went back to my garden, not to plant anything, just to mourn. The backyard gate still groaned when it opened, but someone had trimmed back the ivy. The rose trellis James built, the one that stood there for almost 30 years, was gone. In its place was a pile of gravel and a tipped-over wheelbarrow with a single glove trapped underneath. The ground felt cold and stubborn. Late April in Vermont always played tricks on you. The calendar says spring, but your bones know better. I walked slowly, scanning for anything familiar. The daffodils that used to bloom first, the little ceramic frog we put by the herbs, the copper bird bath James gave me one Christmas when he forgot to buy a card. None of it was there. I opened the shed, expecting it to be empty, but right there, hanging on a hook by the door, were his garden gloves, worn and brown, still shaped like his hands had just slipped out of them. I reached up and took them down gently. The scent of earth and sweat filled my chest like a song I hadn't heard in years. I held them close and let myself take one shaky breath, just one. Then I heard a car door slam, sharp. A woman in a fitted coat and ankle boots was walking up the driveway with a clipboard in her hand. She saw me by the shed and narrowed her eyes. "Hello, ma'am, can I help you?" I didn't answer. She came closer. "Are you with the stager? We're getting ready for an open house next week. I was told no one would be here today." I looked down at James's gloves in my hand. This is my home. Her eyebrows lifted. She took a step back and pulled out her phone. "I'm going to check on that. The listing agent is, let me see, Brielle Mayfield." She tapped the call button. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. Her thumb hovered. "I'll just leave a message." I didn't move. I watched a squirrel dart along the fence, chasing something only it could see. Then my phone buzzed. It was Ramona. I stepped away from the woman and answered, "Hi." Her voice was soft. "Just checking in." "There's a stranger measuring my flower beds," I said. I almost laughed. "And she thinks I don't belong here." "Well," Ramona said, "she's wrong." I turned away from the real estate agent and looked down at the patch of earth where my daffodils used to grow. I knelt and let my fingers rake gently through the dirt. Then I felt something catch under my nail, a thin strip of rusted metal. I pulled it out. It was the little garden marker James and I carved one spring with a pocket knife, J plus J. Just a scrap of tin, really, but to us, it had meant something. I stood up slowly, holding the marker, and slipped it into my coat pocket. "This was my home," I said out loud, louder than I expected. "You can't erase someone with mulch and paint." The agent turned, but I was already walking back toward the gate. They didn't get to rewrite everything. The more Brielle tried to erase me, the more I remembered. And memory, it turns out, is a kind of evidence. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's persistent. It clings to the edge of a page, to the curve of a signature. It lingers in ledgers and old folders no one ever got around to shredding. Mr. Connolly met me at his office again on a Thursday afternoon. The light through the blinds made soft stripes across the carpet. The whole place smelled like lemon oil, paper, and something a little sweeter. On the table between us was a small plate wrapped in wax paper. "Banana bread," he said as he set down his satchel. "My wife insisted. Said you deserved something warm while we dig into something cold." I smiled but didn't touch it. My stomach was already tight with names and dates. He laid out 2 copies of the guardianship paperwork. "This," he said, pointing to the first, "is the signature from Brielle's petition, and this one is yours, from a notarized letter back in 2019. I leaned in. The first signature curved upward at the end. Mine never did. Mine always curled under, small and firm, like it was bracing itself. James used to say my signature looked like it was preparing for a storm. "She traced it," I said quietly. "Not well," he nodded. There was a knock at the door. He stepped out, came back with a small manila envelope. "Sylvia just dropped this off," he said. "She found it in her attic. Your folder from 2 years ago. You asked her to hold on to it when you were clearing things out." He opened it with care. Inside was a faded copy of James's handwritten estate letter. I recognized the ink right away. Blue, always from the same pens he bought at the hardware store. His handwriting was square and tilted slightly to the left. The date in the corner read March 2020. "Assets to be shared equally. House remains in joint name until Judith's passing," Mr. Connolly read aloud, tapping the last line. "That's not what Brielle filed," I said. "No," he agreed, "not even close." He shuffled through more papers, humming under his breath. Then he stopped. "Here," he said, "the notary stamp on this transfer form, dated September 8th, 2023. I stared at it. I was in Barcelona. I still have the boarding pass. He smiled for the first time. That might be the first solid crack in their case. I looked down at the banana bread again. A single walnut pushed through the crust. The cinnamon smell was stronger now. I picked it up, held it in both hands for a second, then set it down. "I want to fight," I said. He looked up. "Not just for the house," I told him, "for the principal, for the daughter I raised who knew better, and for the part of me that forgot I was still here." He gave one nod, reached into his folder, and pulled out a single-page form. "Then we'll start here." At the top it said, "Intent to challenge guardianship." He slid it across to me. The paper felt heavier than it should have. I picked up the pen. This time, my hand didn't shake. And if any of this feels familiar to you, if you've ever been overlooked, pushed aside, or made to feel invisible, tell me. I'm listening. Sometimes just saying it out loud is the first step. If you want to hear the rest of this story, go ahead and subscribe. I won't promise a happy ending, but I can promise the truth. That day in Mr. Connolly's office, surrounded by old paper and the scent of cinnamon, I thought I was fighting for a house. But what happened after that? It showed me how much more I had to reclaim, and just how far I was willing to go. By the end of that week, I had my signature back. And more than that, I had my voice. What surprised me was how quietly it all happened. No big moment, no fireworks. Just a form, a pen, and someone looking me in the eye and saying, "You still count." That Saturday morning, Ramona picked me up with a travel mug of chamomile tea and a grin that said she had something in mind. She told me it wasn't anything fancy, just somewhere warm, somewhere I wasn't someone's mother or someone's victim. We pulled up to an old warehouse, the kind with faded red paint and flower pots made out of rain boots. The sign said Burlington Artists Co-op. Inside, sunlight poured through tall windows, warming up the concrete floor. The air smelled like turpentine, fresh coffee, and a hint of sawdust. I stood at the door for a second. "I haven't touched a paintbrush in 30 years, I said. "You don't have to paint," Ramona told me. "Just step inside." So I did. Chloe, the woman leading the workshop, had on paint-splattered overalls, and her fingers were stained with ink. She looked at me like I already belonged. "We've got a printmaking table open," she said, and pointed toward the back. Ramona gave me a little nudge. "Just try, no pressure." The table was covered in rollers and trays of ink, a few carved blocks with feathers, leaves, and letters scattered across it. I stood there for a long moment, not touching anything. Then I picked up a roller and pressed it into deep blue ink. The smell hit me in a way I didn't expect. It reminded me of something, maybe an old classroom, maybe a rainy afternoon from long ago. I picked out a leaf stamp, pressed it into the paper, and lifted it slowly. A perfect print. The veins so sharp against the white. I let out a breath I hadn't even realized I was holding. Chloe walked past and glanced down. "You've got a good eye," she said. "That symmetry comes natural." I looked at my hands. "I used to quilt," I said, quiet. "That'll do it," she smiled. "Making something is never small." Ramona sat beside me, sketching with bold red strokes. At one point, she leaned over and snapped a photo with her phone. "For evidence," she said. And I laughed, a real laugh, the kind that fills the space between two people like a bowl of warm soup. I printed 2 more leaves, then one with a feather. Then I added initials, just mine this time, no J plus anyone else, just me. That's when Chloe handed me a clipboard. "If you ever want to come back," she said, "we have monthly memberships. No pressure." I took the pen and wrote my name slowly, and for the first time in years, it felt like it belonged to me. When we walked back outside, the cold breeze hit my face. I hadn't realized how many hours had passed. Ramona tapped my arm. "Here," she said, and held up the photo. I looked at it, my head tilted back mid-laugh, a streak of blue ink across my cheek, my eyes wide, not tired, not lost. "You look like someone who remembers who she is," Ramona said. I smiled, and I didn't argue. There's a kind of power in putting your name back on things, on paper, on canvas, and especially on the truth. I felt it the moment my pen touched that envelope. My handwriting wasn't rushed, it wasn't shaky. It was steady, plain, and mine. The kind of writing you learn back when you're still hoping people will understand you. I was sitting at Sylvia's kitchen table. The air smelled like warm cinnamon rolls, though neither of us was in the mood to eat. The letter I wrote was short. No anger, no pleading, just the truth, written in blue ink. "I know what you did. I'm not going away." Sylvia slid a stamp across the table without saying a word. I sealed the envelope, smoothed the edge, and we both watched as I slipped it into my purse like it was something sacred. At the post office, I handed it to the clerk without flinching. She gave me a smile and asked, "Going far?" I looked her in the eye. Just far enough. 3 days later, the reply came. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't even a phone call. It was an email. Cold, almost clinical. It started with, "Dear Mother," and ended with, "I'm sorry you've misunderstood the situation. If this continues, I'll have no choice but to involve proper guardianship authorities." I read it twice. The second time, slower. Not for the words, for the silence between them. There was no denial, just control. She never once said she didn't do it. I forwarded the email to Mr. Connolly with one line in the subject, "Evidence?" An hour later, he called. "Absolutely," he said. "This proves she acted as legal authority. Without the right documents, that's admission through behavior. It helps." That same afternoon, Sylvia knocked on my doorframe, holding a dusty accordion folder. Said she found it in a bin labeled craft supplies. Thought it looked out of place. Inside were home insurance papers from 5 years ago. My name listed as sole owner. No amendments, no transfers. Just me, quiet and clear in black and white. Later that day, I sat in Mr. Connolly's office. The legal petition was already on the table, waiting. I read every word. Guardianship revocation, property misappropriation, unlawful transfer. The legal language was dry, but the weight behind it was very real. "I can file this today," he said, and slid a pen across the table. I didn't hesitate. I signed it. And then, in the corner margin, I wrote something else, small and quiet. "This is me reclaiming my breath." He didn't ask what I meant. He just nodded once and slipped the form into a manila envelope like he already knew it was heading somewhere that mattered. On the walk back, the wind picked up and carried soft petals off the cherry trees. One brushed against my sleeve, then vanished. When I got home, I didn't wait. I walked straight out to the street, opened the blue mailbox, and dropped the envelope in. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. She called me at 2 in the morning, that hour people pick when they're hoping to catch you at your weakest. I was curled up under Sylvia's old patchwork quilt, half awake from the sound of rain tapping softly against the window. The phone lit up on the nightstand. I knew the number. My hands didn't even shake when I answered. Brielle's voice used to sound like honey when she was little. That night, it was glass. Cold, sharp, and ready to break. "Are you enjoying yourself?" That's how she opened. No hello, just poison wrapped in a question. I didn't say anything. She always hated silence. "You've made quite the mess," she went on, telling people lies, dragging my name through the dirt, like I didn't sit by you through surgery, like I didn't drive you to every single appointment after Dad. Her voice hitched, like she wanted to cry but didn't remember how. Still, I stayed quiet. The rain was louder now. It felt like the only thing in the room that made sense. "You don't understand," she said, tightening. "The house was a necessary sacrifice. I had a deadline. The bank wouldn't wait. My name's on everything now. That's legal, Mom. Maybe not nice, but legal." I closed my eyes. And in the dark, I could hear James's voice again. People don't change overnight. They just stop pretending. "You're just lonely," she snapped. "You're scared, like all old people, afraid of being forgotten. That's why you're doing this, isn't it?" Her words hit the air like loose nails on a cold floor. Then I spoke. Slowly, clearly. "Lonely, yes, but not small and not yours." There was a pause. Then she muttered something bitter under her breath, said I'd lost it, said maybe she should have taken control sooner. I don't remember the exact words. I just remember the moment I chose not to hear them anymore. I pulled the phone away from my ear, let my thumb hover for a second, then I hung up. No yelling, no last insult, just one soft press, and silence that felt sacred. I sat there for a while, wrapped in that stillness. The quilt was warm, even though my chest felt empty. Outside, the rain kept coming, steady and soft, like it had waited for this moment. Somewhere down the hall, Sylvia's old grandfather clock ticked past the half hour. Time moved on. So did I. Eventually, I picked up the phone again. Not to call, just to scroll. I found her name. The photo was still us at a fair, maybe 10 years ago. She had cotton candy stuck to her cheek. I looked tired, even back then. I tapped at it, then delete contact. And just like that, the name disappeared. No drama, just space. And in that space, something inside me softened. I took a breath. The air felt cleaner, lighter. The room didn't feel like hers anymore. It felt like mine. I pulled the quilt up a little higher and turned toward the window. The rain was still falling, but I didn't mind. It sounded like something being washed away. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself believe I wasn't broken. I was just beginning. Some things in life get taken from you. Others you choose to leave behind. Ramona was waiting for me at the curb, holding a cup of coffee and wearing that crooked smile of hers. In her hand was a small set of keys, tied together with a piece of blue yarn. "It's not fancy," she said as she pressed them into my palm, "but it's yours." I looked down at them. The edges were worn smooth. One had a little dent, like it had been dropped too many times. But they felt heavier than they looked, not because of the metal, because of what they unlocked. The cottage was tucked at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac near the lake. Pale yellow siding, white trim, a roof that seemed to bow ever so slightly to time. The lawn was patchy, scattered with dandelions, and there was a bird bath out front that leaned a bit, like it had something to say. Mr. Klein, the landlord, met us at the screen door. Thin man, soft voice, age spots on his arms. "We don't do credit scores here," he said as he handed me the lease. "We do character." Ramona shot me a wink. "Told you he was old school." Inside, the place smelled like fresh paint and dust and something faintly floral, maybe lilac, the kind of smell that lingers in old curtains long after the flowers are gone. I only brought 2 boxes with me. One held my scarves, folded like secrets. The other, James's old books, cookbooks, novels, even a dictionary with tape holding the spine together. Ramona helped me carry them in. There was no rush, no pressure. We unpacked slowly. She placed a photo of me and James on the little mantel, and I set down a small porcelain cat beside it. I'd bought it back in '82, on a whim. I don't even like cats, but James said it looked like me when I was annoyed. The windows groaned a little when I opened them. I let the breeze in, full of lake air and birdsong. One of the curtains lifted at the corner and started to sway. And just like that, the room started breathing with me. That afternoon, we went to a thrift store. I found an armchair that creaked when I sat in it. It reminded me of the one we had when Brielle was 5 and still believed monsters lived under the bed. I used to sit beside her in that chair until she fell asleep. This one wasn't the same, but it didn't need to be. Later, Ramona waved goodbye with a promise to bring tea tomorrow. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching the way the sunlight stretched across the floor. Then I went inside, boiled some water, poured it into my favorite mug, and sat. Just sat. No one asking anything of me. No one commenting on the quiet. When I finished my tea, I pulled out a small watercolor I'd painted in Chloe's class a couple weeks back. Blue hydrangeas. I didn't think they'd ever hang anywhere, but now I tacked it up above the couch. It didn't match anything. It didn't have to be. Before bed, I opened my journal. Soft leather cover. Most of the pages still blank. I wrote just one line. "My name is Judith Mayfield. I am not broken." Then I closed it, turned out the light, and let the new key rest on the nightstand, not as proof, just as peace. If you've ever had to truly start over, not just change your surroundings, but really begin again, I'd love to hear about it. What helped you feel like yourself again? What quiet thing reminded you, this is mine now? And if any part of this story speaks to something in you, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be here, taking it one step at a time, telling it as honestly as I can. That evening, as the wind shifted and the old chair creaked beneath me, I thought I was settling into something small. But what came next reminded me of something deeper. Peace isn't where a story ends. Sometimes it's where you finally start to listen. The courtroom smelled like lemon polish and nervous sweat. You wouldn't expect a place where lives change to feel so plain. The benches were too stiff, the lights were too white. And Brielle, she showed up in beige, silk blouse, matching heels, every hair in place. She looked like someone who believed the outcome was already decided. I sat beside Mr. Connolly with my palms resting open in my lap. I could still smell the lavender lotion on my skin. I started using it after James passed, just to remind myself I still had a body. That morning, it reminded me I still had a backbone. They called my name first. I stood up, not shaking, not angry, just steady, and I told the truth. I told them how my daughter sent me to Barcelona, how she smiled at the gate and said, "Enjoy the adventure, Mom," then vanished. How I came home to find my house emptied, my name stripped from everything, and a note taped to the door like that was all I deserved. Mr. Connolly handed the court our documents, guardianship forms with forged signatures, property transfers I never agreed to. He showed email screenshots, my flight receipt, even security footage from Logan Airport. There I was, pulling my suitcase, alone. Then her lawyer stood up, said I was emotionally fragile, that maybe I'd misremembered, claimed Brielle acted out of concern. Then Brielle took the stand. Calm, gentle. She said my mother was struggling, said I was forgetting things, that I left the stove on, that I wandered outside without a coat. She said she was scared for me. And I'll admit, it almost sounded real. She's always been good at that. I remember watching her in high school debate, the way she could twist any story until truth had no room left to breathe. Judge Hartley leaned forward. Did you notify your mother before filing for guardianship? Brielle hesitated. She was abroad. That's not what I asked, the judge said. Yes or no? She looked down. No. Did you have power of attorney at the time? Another pause. Not yet. Then Mr. Connolly passed one last document to the judge, the original deed, signed by James and me long before Brielle ever moved back in. The judge took his time reading it. Then he looked at me. Mrs. Mayfield, do you wish to respond? I turned toward Brielle. She wouldn't meet my eyes. You didn't try to help me, I said. You tried to erase me. You thought if you made it quiet enough, official enough, I'd stay gone. But I'm not. The judge cleared his throat. This case requires further review. I'll issue a ruling in 10 days. He gavelled once. That was it. Outside, the air smelled like wet pavement and lilacs. I walked with Mr. Connolly to the parking lot. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. For the first time in a very long while, I wasn't afraid of what might happen next. I'd already made it through worse, and I was still here. I pulled my coat a little closer and kept walking forward. Life didn't begin again with some big moment. There were no grand announcements, no dramatic music, just the soft whistle of the kettle and the morning sun stretching across the floor like a lazy cat. Ramona showed up around 9. I didn't have to check. I knew it was her by the way she knocked, sure and familiar. She held up a brown paper bag with a grin. "Blueberry muffins," she said, "for strength, and butter." She placed them on the counter without waiting for permission, like she belonged in that kitchen, and maybe, little by little, she did. I made tea while she rummaged through my spice rack, asking way too many questions about oregano. Then we just sat there in silence, watching the steam rise from our mugs like it had somewhere to be. No court dates, no emails, just quiet. Later that morning, I spotted a hydrangea. It was small and kind of awkward looking, sitting in a black plastic pot between some kale and jars of raw honey at the farmer's market. The tag said, "Endless Summer." James used to say they were the toughest flowers he knew. They bloom back better, he'd tell me, after a rough winter. I bought it without even thinking, carried it home like it was heavier than it actually was. Out in the backyard, I dug a hole near the fence. The soil was damp, full of roots and rocks, but I kept at it. My knees cracked, my hands were in the dirt. I planted that little hydrangea slowly, like it mattered, because it did. That afternoon, Ramona helped me clean out the second bedroom. We shifted boxes, stacked up old books, swept out the corners. By sunset, I had a little table by the window, a jar full of brushes, and a clean canvas waiting for me. Ramona looked around and said it looked like someone was becoming herself again. Then she handed me a thumbtack so I could hang up my blue scarf near the light switch, the scarf I bought in Barcelona, the one Brielle never touched. As for the other one, the scarf Brielle had folded into my suitcase without asking, I finally threw it away. No big goodbye, just a breath, a quiet, steady choice. Later that night, I sat down with my journal, opened to the first blank page, and just stared at it for a while. Then I wrote a letter to Brielle. I wasn't going to send it. I just needed those words to live, somewhere besides inside me. I wrote, "I don't hate you, but I will no longer shrink for you. You took a part of me, yes, but not the part I need." I closed the journal and slid it under my pillow. Before bed, I got a message from Sylvia, just a short one. "No matter what the court says, you already won." And she was right. That night, the house was still. No legal noise, no ghosts of what I'd lost, just the sound of my own breath, steady, mine. And in the morning, before the sun was even all the way up, I opened my journal again. I wrote, "I am not who they left. I am who I stayed to become." The envelope was thinner than I expected. No fuss, just a quiet verdict tucked inside a plain white sleeve, sent to me like I'd never left, like I still belonged here. I opened it with steady hands. My tea had already gone cold, but I didn't mind. I held the papers gently, almost like they were sacred, and read the first line twice before it finally landed. This court recognizes Judith Mayfield as full legal custodian of herself and sole rightful owner of 172 Maple Avenue. No conditions, no maybe, just the truth, clean and simple. Outside, the hydrangeas I planted were swaying softly in the breeze. James always said June winds were the kindest. They nudged, not shoved. I folded the letter and placed it on the table next to my journal. Then I heard the porch boards creak. Ramona stepped up, holding a bottle of red wine and 2 solid glasses. She didn't say a word right away, just raised her brows. I nodded. She asked if I was sure. I told her I was. She was already pouring. We clinked glasses, not to celebrate exactly, but to acknowledge what it took to get here. That weight I'd carried for so long had finally slipped off like a soaked coat. She told me I did it, and I looked her in the eye and said no. I remembered who I was. That's what did it. We sat there together on the porch, our knees tucked under the same blanket, watching the sky turn gold over the lake. I told her about the art exhibit I'd signed up for. Nothing big, just a local co-op show. But I'd have a table, my name on the flyer, paintings signed with the name I'd earned, my own. Ramona leaned back, eyes closed, and whispered that people spend years trying to do what I just did. I smiled, just a little. "Years pass anyway," I said. "Might as well spend them becoming yourself again." Before heading inside, I called Sylvia and left her a voicemail. I told her to let Mr. Connolly know the porch light was back on. Then I hung up. Nothing more needed saying. That night, under a sky brushed with stars, I opened the letter again. This time, I read it out loud. slowly, like someone reading their name on a birth certificate, or the last line of a love letter. Every word sounded different when spoken, final, real, earned. I didn't win back my daughter, I said into the quiet, but I won back myself. Then I folded the letter, tucked it beneath the vase with the blue hydrangeas, and let out a breath that came all the way up from the soles of my feet. And I thought, maybe that's the part worth keeping. Sometimes victory isn't loud. It's a letter spoken in your own voice. It's hydrangeas blooming outside your window. It's your name resting in your own hands, finally safe. And that was enough for me. We don't always get to choose how people love us, but we do get to choose what we keep, what we let go, and who we become when the storm has passed. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the one who sees you, even when you forget how to see yourself. And dignity? That's not something anyone can hand you or take away. You rebuild it, little by little. If this story stirred something quiet in you, something that feels familiar, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Tell me what you've held on to and what you finally let go. And if your heart is ready for another story of quiet strength, don't miss My Son Left Me at the Airport Gate. He Thought I'd Cry. I took back the $400,000 instead. I have a feeling it'll reach you where you live. We don't always get to choose how people love us, but we do get to choose what we keep, what we let go, and who we become when the storm has passed. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the one who sees you, even when you forget how to see yourself. And dignity? That's not something anyone can hand you or take away. You rebuild it, little by little. If this story stirred something quiet in you, something that feels familiar, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Tell me what you've held on to and what you finally let go. And if your heart is ready for another story of quiet strength, don't miss My Son Left Me at the Airport Gate. He Thought I'd Cry. I took back the $400,000 instead. I have a feeling it'll reach you where you live.